Hey everyone, and welcome back my YouTube channel. Tonight I want to share a story about something seemingly ordinary that ended up being incredibly unsettling. A few years ago, I was helping my parents sort through some old family belongings in the attic. We came across a box filled with old photographs, most of them faded and yellowed with age, capturing moments from generations past. As we sifted through them, I found one photograph that immediately caught my attention. It was a picture of a group of people standing in front of a large old house. The photo was black and white, and the people in it looked like they were from the early 1900s. There were about 10 of them, men and women in old-fashioned clothing, standing stiffly and staring directly at the camera. What made the photo so striking was the house in the background. It was a grand, imposing Victorian mansion with dark windows that seemed to peer out from the shadows. There was something about the house that felt wrong. It had an almost sinister aura, even in the faded photograph. I asked my parents if they knew who the people in the picture were or where the house was located. They didn't recognize anyone and had no idea about the house. It was a complete mystery. For some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling that this photograph was important, that it held some kind of hidden story. I decided to keep the photo, thinking I might try to research it later. I put it in a frame and placed it on my desk. For a few days, it just sat there, a curious relic from the past. But then I started noticing things. It began subtly. I would catch glimpses of movement in the reflection of the glass, even when no one was behind me. I would feel a sudden chill in the room when I looked at the photograph. I tried to dismiss it as my imagination, but the feeling persisted. Then, the images in the photograph started to change. It was slight at first, almost imperceptible. The expressions on the faces of the people seemed to shift, their smiles fading into something more somber, almost mournful. The shadows around the house in the background seemed to deepen, the dark windows appearing even more ominous. I thought I was going crazy. I would stare at the photo, trying to see if I was just imagining things. But every time I looked, the subtle changes were there. It was like the photograph was evolving. One evening I was working late at my desk, the only light coming from my lamp. I glanced at the photograph, and the changes were more pronounced than ever before. The faces of the people were no longer just somber. They looked genuinely distressed, their eyes wide with fear. And in one of the windows of the house, I thought I saw a fleeting glimpse of a figure. I stood up and walked closer to the photograph, my heart pounding in my chest. I stared intently at the window, trying to see if the figure was still there. It was gone, but the feeling of dread in the room was overwhelming. That night I had terrible nightmares. I dreamt of being inside that dark, imposing house, wandering through shadowy rooms, hearing faint whispers and feeling a constant sense of being watched. The faces from the photograph haunted my dreams, their expressions filled with terror. The next day I was determined to get rid of the photograph. It was clearly having a negative effect on me. I took it off my desk, intending to throw it away, but as I held it in my hand, the image seemed to shimmer and the air around me grew cold. I hesitated. There was a strange compulsion to keep it, to understand its secrets. I decided to try one more thing. I took a magnifying glass and examined the photograph in detail. As I looked closely at the window where I had seen the figure, I noticed something I had missed before. There was a tiny inscription etched into the glass, almost invisible to the naked eye. With the magnifying glass, I could just make out the letters, "Get out." A wave of icy fear washed over me. This was no ordinary photograph. It was a warning. I immediately tried to destroy the photo. I tried to tear it, but it felt strangely resilient. I tried to burn it, but the flame wouldn't catch. It was like the photograph didn't want to be destroyed. Desperate, I wrapped it in a cloth and locked it away in a box, deep in the back of my closet. The feeling of unease in my apartment lessened, but I still couldn't shake the memory of those terrified faces and that chilling warning. I tried to research the photograph online, searching for old houses that matched the one in the picture and trying to find any information about the people in it. But I found nothing. It was like the photograph existed outside of history. To this day, that box remains locked in my closet. Every now and then, I think about the photograph inside, about the warning etched in the window. I don't know who those people were or what happened in that house, but I know that photograph was more than just a snapshot from the past. It was a window into something dark and terrifying, and I'm grateful that I heeded its silent warning before it was too late.